All right, so we all know that Jarrell Big Farmer Miller was meant to be facing Fabio Wardley on June the 7th in Portman Road Stadium. We were all looking forward to that fight. The press conference that they used to kick it off with was, I mean, to say it was fiery is a huge, huge understatement. It was really fiery. It put a lot of butts in seats, I think, just seeing that press conference, never mind the fact that Fabio Wardley is Ipswich true and true. I think the fact you had this real antagonistic character in Jarrell Miller, it was going to make for a good fight. And when you look at it on paper, like people like us who we religiously watch pretty much every fight we can. When you look at that fight on paper, stylistically, you're thinking, oh my god, this is gonna be something else. We had heard rumors, I'd heard rumors that there was some issues with this fight being made, and that Jarrell Miller hadn't even actually signed officially the contract yet, even in spite of the fact he did a press conference. So I was kind of, I don't want to say I was expecting the worst, because I don't do that. I was optimistic we'd see this fight, but in the back of my mind, I was like, right, just be prepared. Be prepared to, don't get your hopes all up on this fight. And it was announced at the start of the week. Well, originally it was reported that this fight was off, but we hadn't heard any official sources claim it, like Queensbury or someone like that. It was just reported. Well, then it was announced the next day that Jarrell Miller was pulling out, citing a shoulder injury. Okie dokie. But, it is a bit dubious given the fact that he was meant to fight Derek Chisora in February. He was going to be the opponent, apparently. And that never materialised. People are saying it's a breakdown between him and more Dimitri Salita. That's why Valine stepped in. I do believe he's also promoted by Salita, if I'm not very much mistaken. But you get what I mean. So it does kind of lead people to speculate and believe that this is a promotional issue with Jarrell Miller, which, again, I've no great love for the guy, but as a selfish boxing fan, I would like it to be resolved quickly because I do enjoy watching him. I might not like the guy as a person, really not, but again, it doesn't stop me not enjoying watching him fight. So it meant then that we have to get a new opponent. Now, there was a short list listed on Boxing Scene. I know All Smoke Boxing were reporting on that as well. And they were basically saying the names were Hergovich, I believe, Justis Huni was in there, as well as Michael Hunter. And then Lawrence Okoli threw his name into the hat, and I was straight away saying, yes, please, Frank, it's in-house, please do it. I like the fight, I love the fight, I think it will be epic. We ain't going to get it. We ain't going to get Lawrence Okoli anyway. Instead, we are actually getting a fight which... I love watching Fabio Wardley fight, but on paper, I'm kind of like, what is the point of this fight? And that is obviously him versus Justis Huni. Now, it is Matchroom versus Queensbury. Justis Huni being a Matchroom fighter and Fabio Wardley obviously being a Queensbury fighter. But again, I look at this fight and I just think, okie dokie, but what is the point of it? What does either guy gain? You're fighting Justis Huni, who has no profile in the UK whatsoever. And he's been pro now a couple of years. He's kind of... I've never really been impressed with him, truth be told. I've seen a couple of his early fights. There wasn't really much to gauge in those early fights. But lately when I've seen him, I've just been like, meh. That fight he had against Kevin Lerena, I mean, I thought he looked terrible in that fight. He was buzzed, I think, at least once in that fight against Kevin Lerena. And Lorena's not even a big puncher. A guy who campaigned at cruiserweight. I think now he's trying to campaign at bridgerweight. He might actually have a belt at bridgerweight. I don't know the ins and outs, but that's the guy he went life and death with. I can't remember what show. That might have been on Fury Usyk, actually, the first fight. I think it was in Saudi Arabia anyway. But he didn't look good. And again, he's gone quite under the radar because I just don't think even Eddie Hearn probably looks at him and thinks, you're probably not going to do a crazy amount, so let's just see what we can do. This fight, though, it's another example of Fabio Wardley. When you think of it like this, him fighting a much more accomplished amateur, because Justis Huni, he was trying to go to, I think, was he trying? I think he might have actually been trying to go to Tokyo in 2021. Very accomplished amateur was Justis Huni. He obviously fought Nick Webb, who was a decent amateur, beat him in a round. He obviously fought Nathan Gorman, who was a decent amateur in the GB squad, beat him. Fraser Clark, need I remind you of the second fight, what happened there? So, yeah, he's fought guys with better amateur pedigrees than him in the past, has Fabio Wardley. It's made no difference. You can tell he's got innate talent there and he's got good bags of ability to burn. But again, this fight just, I don't really get the rationale behind it. I do believe Huni has a high ranking. I think with one of the sanctioning bodies, it might be the WBO. I think I know he's up there in the rankings as well. In fact, actually, there was a lot of talk. Actually, I think it is the WBO he's highly ranked with, because there was a lot of talk before Christmas that they were potentially, maybe if one of those belts at the WBO gets vacated, because at the time you got to remember Parker was going to vacate that WBO belt, the interim belt, to fight Dubois for the IBF belt. So all these, it's a mess. What can I say? But there was a lot of talk they were going to try and do Huni versus Moses Atelma. So they're talking about matching him with Atelma, and he's going in there with Wardley. That kind of says that even Matchroom probably don't really have the greatest amount of faith in him. I just don't see this fight as being as interesting, because Huni is never really, he's not a fighter, and I love heavyweights, he's not a fighter I've ever really looked at and thought, oh, I gotta sit down and watch this. No, I've watched him in the past, but he's one of those fighters where if he's in a bit of a nothing fight, I'll give it a miss, quite frankly. Fabio Wardley, you could find anyone I want to watch, sort of way. So we have this is the fight we have. The undercard, it has Sam Gilly versus Lewis Green, I think the guy's name is. Lewis Green, they fought 2 years ago, I want to say, on a Sky show, on a boxer show. It was a really good fight. Sam Gilly won it. Lewis Green, Louis Green, I think it's Louis is how you pronounce it. He knocked out Jack McCann, his name is, in a round on the undercard of AJ versus Ngannou. He hasn't fought since then. And Sam Gilly stopped him in 4 rounds, I think last October. So that's an interesting fight. It's a good rematch. Domestic level dust up. A bit of a weird one at cruiserweight. You've Mike Perez versus Stephen Ward. Stephen Ward's recently coming out the back of a stoppage win over Tommy McCarthy, who was shot to bits. Mike Perez has really been one of those under the radar fighters since he fought Breedis a couple of years ago, and Breedis felled him an insane amount of times in that fight if you've ever seen it. I wouldn't recommend you go watch. It wasn't a great fight, but Breedis really did. He took the biscuit in that fight with the Felds. Perez should win. Seems to have plenty left in the tank. Mike Perez, he's based in Cork actually. That's the Rebel Count. That's why he's called the Rebel. Which is rare, because most of the Cuban fighters, they base themselves in the States, in Florida or somewhere like that. Not many of them would base themselves in Cork, to be honest with you, in the south of Ireland, but hey, out to each his own. So he's fighting Stephen Ward. He should win that fight, Mike Perez, pretty handily. So the undercard is shaping up alright, but I'm not disappointed. I'd be more annoyed if it was binned altogether. But I'm not as intrigued for this fight as I would have been if it had been Big Farmer Miller. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I hope you enjoyed the video, people. As always, smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, as always, if you haven't already. And until next time, I'll probably do a review of... I'll have to listen to him, though, which is not easy. But I'll do a review of Usyk versus Dubois on that absolute cretin Morgan show. So stay tuned for that. Until then, peace.